Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined not on this Tuesday morning, on this Monday morning, because we're taping a day early because of the holiday, by Chris Welsh and Andrew Erickson. Fellas, it is not only the week of Christmas, it is the week of the Fantasy Championship. We were just talking a bit before we started recording about how we performed in week 16 in the fantasy semifinals. It was not a good week for me. I will make the title game in a few places, but not the leagues I care most about. I'm going to get edged out in the Scott Fishbowl finals. I had a very strong week, actually, but everybody did, and I will not make the finalists there. We were talking about some of the content leagues, some of the industry leagues we're in together. A lot of disappointing performances for me, at least, and I faced Jonathan Taylor in a number of places, which was pretty much an auto loss. Welsh, how did your teams fare this weekend?
We did pretty good. The ones that survived coming into this week, I think I'm going into 2 championships, and then I'm still in the championship round of the Fantasy Pros Online FFPC, the Fantasy Pros Online Championship. They just take the final 3 weeks, they round them up. I had a very strong week. I had Brian on one team. It was like Brian Thomas and Bijan. It was a very, very strong week on that team. So hoping to make some cash. But there's a couple others. I had that classic, by the way, where it was like the prior week stinker, and then I look at those teams this week, would have just like done some demolishing flex.
You can't even look. You can't do that to yourself.
I shouldn't have. Yeah, flex leagues, I would have moved on to the championship, but no bueno. Erickson, how about you, buddy?
I had 3 teams left playing in the semifinals. One of them was lost. It got destroyed. So that team will not be moving on. But 2 teams, and the one that I care about the most, I've talked about before on this show, Puka Nacua, even though he didn't really have a good game, that team has Brian Thomas on it. So he's been helping a lot. And Jaden Daniels. So Jaden Daniels obviously had that monster game against the Eagles, and that's going to propel a lot of people. So including me. So unless something very weird happens on Monday Night Football, I should have at least 2 teams advancing to the championship. So looking forward to week 17 and getting predictions.
Isn't it incredible too? I forgot this other. So I have like 2 in the championship, FFPC, and my favorite thing, because you said your favorite league is, and I've mentioned this tons of times, the pentathlon. I'm playing in the 5-event league that my friend Derek Van Riper at The Athletic is put together, and we are first place in one of the events in the Superflex League. And we had Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts gets knocked out. Also destroyed my wallet right before Christmas. Thanks a lot. Hope he's okay though. But isn't it amazing when you get those other players that pick you up? Like in that one, I had Justin Jefferson. Like we look like we're going to just score low. And then the rest of your players, like they know what's happening, Erickson. They're picking you up. They're saying, we're going to pick up what Jalen Hurts lost, and we are going to play for you. It's like a Christmas miracle. Justin Jefferson and a host of other great guys. I don't know. We'll always remember those guys that pick up the slack for the quarterbacks or the big players that we lose, in the first quarter of the most important time in fantasy.
Well, that's why team morale is so important. So in week 17, you drop all your bench guys. You pick up Nick Chubb. You pick up Tank Dell. You pick up Chris Godwin, Rashee Rice, all these guys that deserve to be on the ship. And you pick them, throw them on your bench, and then they become league winners.
Get them a ring. Get him a ring.
That does bring morale.
I will. I'll be facing Mike Mayer in the finals of our Fantasy Pros Dynasty League that we have. So that's one fun one. And I'm hoping if I get a miracle tonight, and again, we are recording this on Monday morning because of the holiday. This will be released on Tuesday, so we don't know yet what's happened in Packers Saints. But if I get a miracle, a bad game from both Jacobs and Jaden Reed, then I might be facing Erickson in one championship as well. But it will not be likely
because I'm going to be starting Mason Rudolph. So around Christmas, you better watch out.
We will be talking here about how we did in week 16 in our predictions, and then mostly looking ahead to week 17. So again, just to emphasize again, probably too much at this point. We are taping this early, so we're gonna do the best we can as far as like if guys are playing or not, as far as we might include some Packers and some predictions. They obviously haven't played yet. So if anybody gets hurt or ends up not playing, you're listening to this later in the week, maybe after the holidays or right before Christmas or however you want to do it. Just bear in mind, this is early Monday morning. We want to get everybody a show, but we also wanted to give ourselves and our editing team, who does a wonderful job all year, a break on Christmas Eve and Christmas. So that's why we're rolling early. Let's see, how did we do in week 16? Erickson, as of now, and you do still have one prediction waiting to see how it does tonight. As of now, you got literally nothing right from last week.
That's the meanest you've ever been. I was like, oh, Erickson's going to have done good. You're like, and awful.
It was a bad one. I was updating it throughout the day yesterday, and I had like all the predictions written down, and it was either deleted if you didn't get it or leave it in the outline if you did. And it was just delete, highlight, cut, delete. It was brutal.
What did I have? So,
we knew Goff. We knew Goff was going to blow up in your
Goff one. Did not go well.
Totally wrong. Troy Franklin did go over his receiving yards prop. He just didn't catch any deep passes.
He didn't catch the long one.
Marvin Mims had the long reception, not Troy Franklin. Although Bo Nix didn't even really throw the ball downfield at all. It was all checkdowns to Javonte. So there's that one. Christian Watson is on Monday night, so we don't know about that. So that one's gonna hit. So
it's actually 100% gonna hit.
Yeah.
Erickson's logic of the world, which is pretty sound, by the way. It saved me in multiple spots. That way, there's no chance Erickson can go 0 for 5. So I'm gonna now bet hard on Christian. What was your prediction on Watson?
I think it was over his receiving and a touchdown.
So, all right, everybody already knows what happens, and you know that basic. He hit.
Erickson, you listed a bunch of the ones you had. You didn't list the big one that we've been talking about
Trey McBride
for like a month, which was Trey McBride.
I swear, like Kyler Murray just doesn't. I don't know. Like he sees Marvin Harrison, he's like, I got to throw a fade to Marvin Harrison. He never catches ever.
Kyler Murray stinks. He stinks. He had McBride in the end zone, overthrew him, which then turned into a pass interference call.
Yes. And then they immediately threw the DJ Dallas. Yeah.
But then if you watch that play, it was like a full set. It was like 3 tight ends or whatever. It's play action. McBride goes to the left, wide open. Kyler Murray never even looked over there and went to DJ Dallas because I bet it. Of course, I ride with my homie. I'm on Trey McBride 2 straight weeks on money, and I'm like McBride, DJ Dallas. Kyler Murray hates Trey McBride. And I don't know if you guys saw too, Trey McBride not happy after the game, had a few words about how cooked they got. That was recorded. Kyler Murray's rough is what I'm saying. Kyler Murray's pretty rough.
What was my last one? My last one I got wrong, I guess I should say.
You had we did it at a time where we thought that Carson Wentz might start for the Chiefs, so you had him having a good game. So that one's a little unfair.
Oh, that one kind of got butchered. I don't even remember.
He didn't really have the opportunity to.
So that one's a void.
To see how he did. But
let's talk about mine.
0-3.
Yeah, Welsh did much better. Some of the ones you didn't technically get, but like,
if you are gonna pick on me.
I'm saying you did. Like for example, you had Bucky Irving getting a rushing and a receiving touchdown. He didn't get that, but he had a good game. Like that spiritually was correct. You were right about Lamar Jackson exercising demons against the Steelers, but he didn't technically throw for 300 yards.
Okay, so but I said 3 touchdowns, and I had said 300 total yards, and he was like 220
you were
total.
Spiritually correct for sure.
I think
I'll count
manifested correct.
Yeah, I'll count it. And then you were definitely like objectively correct on Jerome Ford 80+ yards and a touchdown, and George Kittle doing well against Miami, getting his 100+ yards. So you hit spot on a couple of these as well.
Yeah, you know what I remember too. Brian Thomas, I think, had that huge play this week, and I put it in my brain that I had put that on there. The one I got really wrong was Keon Coleman. That was from the previous week. Brian Thomas was having that. Before. Yeah, I would say soothsayer, as Erickson would say. Like, I'm going to give myself the points. I nailed all of those to a very high degree. Keon Coleman, big, fat, stupid, idiot prediction.
But the rest
Why would I think he would do anything whatsoever? But I'm going to take 4 wins on that with 1 loss.
Yeah, the rest of them you maybe missed if you were like betting their props, like technically, but you get a win for the overall prediction.
Thank you
on the rest. And to be clear, you only needed to get one of them right to do better than Erickson.
Because if you don't remember, Erickson, everything you did was wrong. Just if you forgot. Okay.
All right, let's get into our week 17 predictions. It'll be interesting to see kind of what direction you guys took these, given how early in the week we are doing this relative to usual. But we're going to see if, it can hardly be much worse, Erickson. So we'll start with you. What's your number 5 prediction for week 17?
J.K. Dobbins is going to come back off of injured reserve and rush for 134+ yards against the New England Patriots. First of all, it's a great matchup, and J.K. Dobbins is eligible to come off the injured reserve, and I just cannot stand any more of the Gus Bus experience too much on Thursday night. The guy's sitting on like 20 yards. He rips off this like the longest run of his career, seemingly, and destroys all of the Gus Edwards unders that I had on Thursday night. But scored 2 touchdowns. I'm sure he helped a lot of people in their fantasy championships, Gus Edwards. So shout out to the Gus bus. But I think that Dobbins, if he is eligible to play and comes off IR, that they're going to throw him right back into the fire, because I think Dobbins, he has incentives. There's a reason why I picked 134 yards exactly. So he gets an additional 150K for each of the thresholds that he reaches in terms of rushing yards. So he's at 766 right now. If he gets to 900, he gets an additional bonus. If he gets to 1,050, he gets another additional bonus. So I'm going to expect that, hey, he can get to 134 yards, get that first bonus because that'll put him over 900. And then even in week 18, we could see him run a lot more. So I like J.K. Dobbins bouncing back here. It's a great matchup against the New England Patriots. They can't stop the run. James Cook got there on not even that much volume last week, going over 100 yards. So I like Dobbins, and I think that I wouldn't be hesitant to start him in fantasy. Like, I think you should start J.K. Dobbins if he's eligible to play.
I was surprised when I saw in the outline that you would put specifically 134 plus yards. I guess it makes sense that it would be based around some kind of incentive. Welsh, what do you think about, maybe not specifically 134 yards, but Dobbins having a big day and being a very viable start in what will theoretically be his first game back, assuming he is officially activated?
Yeah, I like the logic of it. Again, though, like the 134, this will be the, like, he goes for 100 and you're going to spiritually say he was pretty right. And I'll be like, that was right. But like, yeah, like I probably wouldn't pick the 134 because he's like, I don't see him like hitting the incentive and then pushing it that hard in that first game back. But if he has like 100, he's probably within the distance where next week I would be like, oh, now we're going to go like hard. We're going to go on incentive based numbers. But yeah, I think the only thing that worries me is him coming back and, having this very, very vast history of injuries and it happening again this year, that they would want him a little bit healthier and you don't want to give him 20 plus carries. So I would be worried he'd be limited to 10 to 12 just to get his feet under him. But he has had some big explosive plays this year. So I don't know. If I were playing, say, like whatever his rushing yard prop is, I think I'm going to want to go over it this week. I think that's a play because incentives are in the, I wouldn't say the rear view, kind of in the rear view. They're right there, but I'm not sure we're going to hit that 134. But I like the logic of what's happening here because you want to get him set, you want to get him going. And as Erickson was talking about off air like the other week, and a lot of people do, it is incentive time. This is the time where people are like going heavy on yards and catches. That's why Mike Evans is a big play right now. And knowing these type of things are really important. I think didn't someone ask Baker Mayfield about this last week with Mike Evans? And he's like, I'm paying attention to more of the 1,000-yard club incentives than he is. So yeah, I think that the logic is really sound here, and J.K. Dobbins getting some run is good. Just worried about what the volume looks like.
Quickly, Erickson, I know it's definitely too early for rankings, but what kind of range do you expect Dobbins to fall in for you?
Top 24, I would say, probably in that RB2 range. I mean, look, James Cook had 11 carries last week. He had 100 yards against the Patriots, right? So even if Dobbins gets 10 carries, that might be enough to do some serious damage against. Yeah. I mean, this Patriots defense is so bad. Like, they can't stop anything. So the Chargers are in must-win territory. They're trying to make a run at the postseason. It's a good matchup. They play on Saturday, too, so it should be fun.
Welsh, what's your number 5 prediction?
All right. The first one I'm going to go with, a little slight caveat here because there might be a player issue with it, but the main crux of it is going to be going down the Audric Estime train. And we're going to go Audric Estime, pulling off 75 plus total yards and a touchdown against the Cincinnati Bengals. Why I'm giving it a caveat: Jaleel McLaughlin is fully healthy and available. Let's just move this to him. Let's just put this over to McLaughlin. I like this in play for both of these guys. What I do like is estimated this past week, 9 carries, 48 yards against the Chargers. That's a tough one, and a touchdown, averaging over 5 yards per carry. What did I do with Jerome Ford last week? We picked on the Bengals. Who are the Broncos playing? The Bengals. The Bengals still giving up the tippy top. This hasn't updated here, but going into this past week, the Bengals were giving up the most fantasy points to running backs, the most receiving yards to running backs. So if McLaughlin is active, I really like this plus 75 because he's going to be heavily involved in the receiving game. This is a little bit of a Javonte Williams thing on the receiving side, but Audric Estime getting more carries. I know they want to see more out of him. If McLaughlin is not there, they can get in this game. Audric Estime going to get over those 10 carries, have 75 plus, and just rip off what you can do against the Bengals because we saw it from Jerome Ford. So 75 and a score for Audric Estime, assuming Jaleel McLaughlin is inactive.
Erickson, this would be clearly the best game of Estime's young career for fantasy purposes. Do you think that it'll play out the way Welsh sees it?
I hope so, because I love Estime, but I hate Sean Payton. And this is a classic. Hey, like
And he
Estime
hates
looks like
you.
the guy. Estime looks like the guy. Like he even started the game on Thursday night, and the broadcasters messed it up, saying, "Oh, Javonte Williams up the middle for blah blah blah." It's like, wait, that's not Javonte Williams. That's Audric Estime starting the game. And I'm just so sick of being bamboozled by Sean Payton when it's like, oh, the trends say that this should be the next guy getting the volume. And I'm terrified if McLaughlin comes back and then adds another wrinkle to this prediction. The other thing, too, that I have concerns about is the game script. If the Bengals get a lead, like, is Estime even in the game anymore? Because I love Javonte in that pass catching role. So that's where I'm concerned about where this potentially goes off the rail. Again, I would love all the confidence where it'll be like, love Estime. It's a great matchup. I think that fantasy football wise, like, there are going to be people that might need to start Estime, even as like a flex or an RB3 play, because it is a good matchup for him. And when in doubt, I think attacking some of these softer matchups makes a lot of sense. But I don't think I've ever been right, like backing 1 week of a sample size of this Broncos backfield and then following it the next week and being correct. So that's my only hesitance on it.
Who do you guys think wins that game, by the way? It's huge for the AFC playoff picture. Bengals are laying 3.5 at home.
It's only 3.5. I'm taking the Bengals. Yeah, I'm taking the Bengals. The Bengals are playing much better right now. Like they're winning the games that they should beat against bad teams. The Broncos defense has not been playing nearly as well as it was to start the year. And I don't know if Bo Nix can keep up with Joe Burrow. I mean, this offense scores like 35 points a game.
It's kind of like which version of Bo Nix shows up too, because we've seen this incredible, like really accurate, get the ball to everybody version of Bo Nix. And then we've also seen that like rookie version just show its head. The thing also is like, if you could stop Jamar Chase, that's like a feat in itself, but then they got T Higgins and then they've got Chase Brown. So yeah, I don't like hooks like that. I probably would take the Bengals at this point, but back just real quick on the logic. You're right. If the Bengals were to get out really, really quick, this could be disastrous. But I would think one of the things the Broncos are going to want to do also is you want to control the game and you want to control the clock. And that's something Estime rattling off over 5 yards per carry against a Chargers defense last week really works well for them to want to use him to control the clock. But, he's probably going to come out third downs. That's where Javonte comes in, again, assuming McLaughlin's not there. But my assumption is if I guess by this logic, maybe I would want to take the hook with the Broncos here. But I guess I am leaning a little bit Bengals. Ugh.
It's the highest total of the week at exactly 50. I mean, Erickson, you said the Bengals are scoring 35 a game. You got to keep up. If you take out the back-to-back at Ravens, at Chiefs, where the Broncos didn't score much, since week 7, their points scored are 33, 28, 38, 29, 41, 31, 27. They've been a very, very productive offense for really the last 2 months here, outside of just that one back-to-back game against the 2 hardest teams on their schedule. So that'll be a really fun one. And like I said, very big for the AFC playoff picture. If you are thinking about betting that game, we've got a special offer for you all. Unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free. Download the Betting Pros app today and use code FP free to start betting smarter, not harder. Again, that's promo code FP free. Betting Pros Premium gives you exclusive access to cutting-edge tools that take your betting game to the next level. Our same-game parlay tool creates winning parlays with ease. Our prop bet analyzer and prize picks prop bet cheat sheet uncovers the picks that provide the most value. Our betting systems allow you to create and backtest custom strategies that help you find value and maximize your bankroll. Take the guesswork out of betting. Download the Betting Pros app, use code FPFREE, and start winning today. Erickson, what is your number 4 prediction?
Najee Harris is going to finish under 50 rushing yards against the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas. No presents for Najee Harris, just Cole. You look at Najee Harris and the way that he's been used over the last couple of weeks, and it hasn't been great. The usage has been down. He's been outsnapped by Jaylen Warren in 3 straight games. Harris had a 28% snap share on Saturday, and that was the lowest that he's played all season. So the team is really leaning more on Jaylen Warren, especially since George Pickens has missed so much time. And this offense hasn't been as effective overall. They're not moving the ball effectively with Russell Wilson. They're not running the ball great with Najee Harris. And it's a tough matchup against Kansas City Chiefs. Joe Mixon struggled. I know we talked about Mixon on the Starter Sit show about could this be a guy that you're potentially sitting this week, and he wasn't really productive against the Kansas City Chiefs. So tough matchup for Najee Harris on the ground. So I'm going to lean towards taking the under on him, as I think that he's kind of hit a wall at the end of this season. Take the under on Najee Harris and his rushing yards against Kansas City.
Yeah, I strongly agree with this one. Welsh, are we all co-signing it together, or are you going to go against us?
No, complete cosign. Like I was putting together something before we did this show about Jaylen Warren. Like, let's go back to Jaylen Warren. Let's go into that. And I think they need to lean on him more. It'll be probably be more in the passing game side. So yeah, I'm completely with this one.
Where do you expect to have him ranked? Welsh, go first.
Najee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't even tackled that. I would say it's probably going to be in the 30s, like somewhere between 28 and 32 is my gut on this. How about this? No McLaughlin, Audric, Estime, or Najee Harris this week.
Well, see the way I think it seems like it'd be close when you say it like that. But when I think about, okay, well, RB committee, good matchup. RB committee, bad matchup. I'll just take the running backs in the committee in the good matchup, which is the Denver Broncos running backs over the Steelers running backs.
Estime over Najee. You heard it. I think I would do this. I mean, obviously my prediction without McLaughlin being there, I would take, if McLaughlin's active, I take him over Najee. They're not going to be able to run super great. So I'm completely with this here.
Erickson, if I said Harris was RB 31, would that be too high, too low, or just right?
I think that seems right in the range, because you can't like completely bury the guy, even if you don't necessarily think he's in a great spot, because he does get enough volume. You think he gets touchdown equity, but I mean, he's definitely going to be ranked behind Jaylen Warren, based on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And especially if the Steelers are chasing points, you're going to see Jaylen Warren out there catching passes from Russell Wilson, probably not from Najee.
Welsh, what is your number 4 prediction for week 17?
All right, number 4, we are going to my first touchdown boy from this past week, Isaiah Likely. We're going to get back in the game. We're going to get one of those big Isaiah Likely games. We're going to get another touchdown. We're going 75 yards. We've got a touchdown and 5 catches up against the Texans, which is being played on Christmas. This will be the late Christmas game here. So when you're looking at the Texans, wide receivers currently giving up the 5th least receptions going into this past week. This hasn't, again, we're doing this Monday morning, so some of this data hasn't updated, but going into week 16, they had given up the 5th least receptions to wide receivers on 60 targets, only 34 catches. So they are giving up some big plays, but they haven't been, they've kind of been locking some of that down. So in a respect of also not being able to like really, really run on this team, even though they're going to still do it with Derrick Henry in that play action, where are the advantages over the last month? And what I gave you, by the way, was the last month as well on wide receivers. They're giving up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends over the last month. Couple touchdowns. I likely had this touchdown this past week. He's a big breakaway play guy. I think this is a really good spot for them to get him in the slot, get him out for some of those big plays, break one of those big plays. Again, on the wide receiver side, they're giving up a really low amount of receptions, but they're giving up only 500 yards on those 34. So if you take the value of where they're guarding against tight ends, and Mark Andrews, by the way, has been fantastic, and he's going to continue getting those targets. But I think this is really going to be about Likely and them locking down those wide receivers and Andrews, and Likely getting open and making those big plays. And you saw Lamar Jackson was targeting him in the red zone, as he likes to target his tight ends. When he gets in the red zone, if they're not running, it's going to Andrews or it's going to Likely. So I like Likely to have a big step up spot here, 575 and a touchdown against the Texans.
He's only hit 75 receiving yards in a game twice this season, and one of them was that week 1 explosion. So since week 1, he's only done it once. I think this is also a really nice call. Zay Flowers is not practicing. They're only 2 games away from playing because they're playing on Wednesday this week. So with that quick turnaround, they're talking like they're optimistic Zay is going to play, but you never know just how limited he is or just how the shoulder is going to look when we get to Wednesday morning. Nelson Aguilar has the concussion. Rashad Bateman played and caught a touchdown, but obviously he's been dealing with a foot injury as well. So Andrews and Likely are the 2 reliable, healthy options in this passing game right now.
And no Justice Hill. My bets completely crumbled last week. Justice Hill is one of those guys they like to have in some of those short line throws. 100%. With a concussion, there's no chance he plays. Even more reason why I like Likely to be more involved in that passing game, kind of taking some of that role from Justice Hill.
They will use Likely in the screen game for sure. Hill is better at it, but they do like Likely in that role, even as a tight end. So I really like that. I think the 5 catches is like definitely happening, and I could see him breaking one to get 75 yards out of them. Erickson, do you like Isaiah Likely this week?
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Justice Hill point too until Welsh brought it up. I think that's really key because you saw both tight ends play pretty significant snaps. Andrews was at 76% on Saturday, and then you had Isaiah Likely at 66%, and they combined for 3 red zone targets. The routes were split pretty evenly. So usually it's a case of, well, one guy's running routes, the other guy's blocking, and it becomes very problematic. But with all the injuries kind of piling up for the Ravens at some of these pass catching positions, obviously Deontay Johnson no longer a factor, not like he really was anyway, but he's not coming through that door anytime soon to get targets in this offense. So Likely, again, a player that when he's gotten opportunities, right, that's always been the issue with him. When he's gotten opportunities, when he's gotten targets, like he has stepped up and delivered. So, yeah, I think that this makes a lot of sense. We know he's got upside attached to a passer like Lamar Jackson, and Houston's defense is pretty tough against the run. A lot of their touchdowns this year have been through the air. Like that's how they've given up a lot of their production. So even if Likely doesn't get the 75 yards necessarily, I feel you really feel good about playing a tight end attached to Lamar Jackson that has touchdown equity. And if they sell out to try to stop Derrick Henry, then you could see Likely falling in the end zone. So I do like that a lot.
It's the most wonderful time of the year for getting in on all of the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. We've got the reverse doubleheader from Saturday coming up on Christmas Day, the other end of the round robin. Chiefs Steelers coming first on Christmas, Ravens Texans second. Both road teams are favored. KC laying 2.5 points. Baltimore's laying 4. Biggest game of the week, though, probably Packers Vikings, an incredible NFC North matchup. Minnesota's laying 1.5 at home. Also, Denver Cincy, hugely important game for the AFC playoff picture. All in all, it's shaping up to be an amazing week of games. Lines and odds are subject to change, of course. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Erickson, let's go to prediction number 3.
Chig Okonkwo, tight end for the Tennessee Titans, scores a touchdown against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Okonkwo last week, he carried over his usage that he got 2 weeks ago, double-digit targets. He had 8 with Mason Rudolph when Rudolph came in with relief of Will Levis, and it carried over. He had 11 targets, 33% target share, caught 9 passes for 81 yards, but he didn't score. And it's funny because on the BP prop show, Joey P said that Nick Westbrook-Akine and Calvin Ridley would both score, which of course they both did. And I pushed back. I was like, well, I think it's going to be Okonkwo that scores. And of course, no touchdowns for Chig Okonkwo, despite the fact that he led the team in targets, had the most yards, and he played nearly every snap. He played 85% of the snaps, which is one of the highest of the year for him. So the Titans have really gone away from a tight end by committee when they were using some of these other players. It is really now Chig Okonkwo as that main tight end pass catcher. And I love the matchup against the Jaguars, 3rd most touchdowns allowed to tight ends this season. So Okonkwo, he's led the team in targets the last 2 weeks. And that's because Mason Rudolph has been the starting quarterback. So I think that's going to carry over here in a great matchup against a really bad Jaguars defense. Mason Rudolph has shown that he can be competent, especially in plus matchups, to get the ball to his playmakers. I think Okonkwo's really stepped up. So among like tight end streamers this week, again, because Okonkwo was still available on the waiver wire, he's my number 1 guy that you should add this week and potentially start in a great matchup.
I know, again, we haven't like really settled into rankings for the week yet, but like, again, give me a range for Okonkwo that you expect him to fall for you.
I mean, he's probably going to be in the Brenton Strange, Jake Ferguson type of range, and it's going to come down to like matchups, I would say. You know, this week, obviously, or heading into last week, Strange was kind of like the tight end streamer du jour, and he laid an egg, unfortunately, against the Raiders. But Okonkwo was kind of in that range, similar to me, not as high in that tier. But I think that he's going to be in a similar range, probably definitely inside the top 15, and probably sneaking inside the top 12. So he's just been hot the last 2 weeks, and I want to ride that, especially in a great matchup.
Welsh, Chig, Okonkwo, tight end, let's say 13. Too high, too low, just right.
No, I think that's like just right. Like when you asked the question in my head, I was like between 10 and 15. 15 is probably the floor. The target share as of recent, that like makes me feel really optimistic. I guess what they did in the second half too, like that team just is, they're like rough to watch. And then all of a sudden it's coming back and they're doing the thing. So yeah, I think like 15. I'm trying to determine if it was like him versus, let's say, Brenton Strange. Do you see Okonkwo as the upside play versus Strange? I mean, Strange had this stupid fumble. He can get a nice target share, but it's just Brian Thomas. Like Erickson, when you look at that, if someone was like, okay, Brenton Strange or Okonkwo, I need to make up points. Which one are you siding with in that question?
I think Okonkwo, because you've seen it with him. I mean, look, he hasn't even scored a touchdown the last 2 weeks, right? So he's been doing it without touchdown equity. Imagine if he scores a touchdown in a matchup where the Jaguars allow a lot of touchdowns to tight ends.
It's just they don't like that, or they do. But I'm saying the Titans, it's just like Tajay Spears, it's Pollard, it's like everybody but him. That's my only problem. But I guess you're saying, like, your point, the matchup is like really good for this to finally happen. I just don't feel like he's first or second read in the red zone ever.
Well, you could argue that Strange, I mean, he's clearly behind Brian Thomas Jr. Like, he's behind Brian Thomas Jr. in total targets in volume.
Without
but
question.
Okonkwo, he has more targets than Calvin Ridley the last 2 weeks. And Mason Rudolph is the quarterback. So I think from just a target projection, I think Okonkwo will out-target Strange because he's the number one. He's been the number one receiver on his team. And I like the matchup for him against Jacksonville's defense versus Strange's matchup against the Titans' defense.
I like it.
Welsh, what do you got for your number 3?
All right, fingers crossed that Jordan Love made it out of the Monday night game, because I'm jumping into Packers play, and I'm going with Jordan Love. We're going to go 300, 3 touchdowns, and I'm going to throw in a little side piece here for Jaden Reed to score a touchdown. Going up against the Vikings, this is going to be, I guess I'd have to like analyze the slate like when I'm staring at it. I'm not sure there's a game I care about more. Like, I don't care about the Niners anymore. Niners and Lions could have been a good game. It won't be. It's not. Packers Vikings is everything. That's everything that I want. So I love Jordan Love in this matchup. Also, you're going to get him into a dome and you're going to get him out of weather. Vikings going into this pass game were giving up the most passing yards to quarterbacks over the last month. Like a wild number. Now, from a fantasy points perspective, if you're looking at that, they're not at the tippy top because it's not a bunch of touchdowns. And going into this past week, they had 4 interceptions. But I love Jordan Love in this matchup. I think they are going to be slinging the ball, and you can pass on the Vikings. And I think that is exactly what they're going to do. What is the line? You were saying earlier, I see 48.5. I'm actually surprised, because what was the game that was 50? It was
Denver,
Broncos,
Cincinnati
Bengals.
is 50. I actually, when I was putting together, I was kind of preparing the read for the DraftKings Sportsbook, I was like, that's a great game. Packers, Vikings, that's going to be the highest total of the week. And I went to just double check on DraftKings, and Cincy Denver is 1.5 points higher. So they're at 50. And like you said, I think it's 48.5 for Green Bay, Minnesota, or 49 is what I'm seeing now. So it moved up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would play the over anything under 50. So I'm gonna also, let's go with it. Let's tag the over. The only thing I think that could hold against that is like Josh Jacobs has been incredible. Again, knock on wood for whatever happens in the Monday night game. But maybe it's an anticipation of them being able to run and slow the game down. But you can pass. You can pass in volume against the Minnesota Vikings. So I really like Jordan Love in that spot. Christian Watson, Dobbs has been getting involved. They've got the whole crew. They got the entire crew, and Jordan Love is going to show off in that divisional matchup. So 300, 3 touchdowns. And like I said, let's throw a Jaden Reed score in there. Let's go with the over. Let's play it all. Game of the week.
By the way, just point of order to make sure nobody corrects me. The actual highest total of the week, I hadn't scrolled all the way down to Monday. It is Detroit, San Francisco. That's up at 51 for the totals.
Under.
On the week 17 slate, I would
team total for the Lions. Take the team total for the Lions.
Yeah.
Taking a week off from the Lions and the 49ers.
yeah, you might want to do that, Erickson. So let's assume that the Packers take care of business tonight and, come out of it looking relatively healthy, and there's nothing wrong with the guys that Welsh mentioned here for his prediction. Do you like Jordan Love having a big game, Jaden Reed scoring a touchdown?
Yes, because if Jaden Reed scores a touchdown week 17, probably means he didn't do it week 16, and Christian Watson scored instead. So love that, first of all, for Jaden Reed. So thank you, Welsh, for that. And yes, the Minnesota Vikings are the one matchup that is going to force Green Bay for volume, right? Because that's been the biggest issue with these receivers, right? We all know they're super talented. We all know, oh my God, Dobbs and Reed and Tucker Kraft and Christian Watson, but they all get like 4 targets. And it's not enough to feed fantasy football managers what they want to have. But the Vikings are the one defense that creates volume for their opposing teams. We're seeing it every time that the Bears play that team. The Bears are throwing the ball all across the yard. So I like Jordan Love here to have a ceiling performance because even in this matchup against the Saints, like, again, I don't know exactly what happened, but it wouldn't be surprising if Jordan Love throws the ball 20 times, is efficient, but they give the ball to Josh Jacobs 30 times, and he scores all the touchdowns because they can just dominate with the run game. Minnesota, that's tougher to do because they have a much tougher run defense, so it could force Green Bay to throw more, and this is when you get those ceiling games from Jordan Love. So, yeah, I really like this call, Welsh.
By the way, for anybody watching on YouTube, you can see I'm starting to get blinded by the lights. I'm in my mom's office because I'm traveling for the holidays, so I don't have my usual setup. And her
You look like a
office,
pop star. You look like you painted part of your face.
yeah, I kind of do. Her office has this like nice view of a pond in the backyard, and the sun is coming off of the
Welcome
icy
to
water.
the East Coast, Worm. Welcome.
Yeah. Listen, I grew up on the East Coast. I was born in the.
This is when the sun comes up. This is terrible.
Yeah, this. My right eye is getting blind. I'm gonna like come away from the show like half sunburnt on just a quarter of my face. Erickson, what's your number 2 prediction?
Anthony Richardson is gonna throw for 200 yards against the New York Giants.
How many pass attempts he had this past week? I mean, like interrupt. But how many pass attempts?
No. This is part of the bit. He had 11, and he averaged over 11 yards per attempt. That's what I'm saying here, right? So the New York Giants, right? Defense you can easily run the ball on. So I'm not expecting a lot of passing volume from Anthony Richardson. Although the fact that the game is on the road, sometimes weird things happen, especially when it's just like, oh, the Colts are going to destroy this team, yada yada yada. I mean, we saw last week they let the Titans somehow crawl back into that game when they were up massive. And then you look up, oh, this is a 1-score game. So maybe it's a little bit more competitive. But specifically looking at the Giants, we were on Darnell Mooney last week. We liked him going over his receiving yards, which he did. Even though he didn't catch any like really deep passes from Michael Penix was targeting the ball downfield because that's how you beat this Giants team. They're dead last in terms of EPA per target on deep ball passes. And that's the one thing Anthony Richardson can do. He can throw the ball deep. He can chuck it downfield. He leads the NFL in deep passing percentage and average depth of throw. So I'm not saying, oh, Richardson, take the over on his deep pass or his pass attempts. I have no idea what that number is going to be, but
take the under.
He's going to launch a couple balls here. And if they're ever going to hit, it's going to be in this particular matchup. So I'm going to take the over on Richardson. Again, his line is probably going to be at 170 yards or something extremely low because, yeah, that's kind of what we're working with with Richardson. But yeah,
it might be like 150. Like he can't get out. They do not want him throw. I will tell you this though, I almost did the same thing. I almost played the same one just because like the matchup is so great. They didn't need you. They did the thing that they want the most, that to protect Anthony Richardson, to make him not make stupid decisions and tap out and want to leave the game because he's tired. So what did they do? Jonathan Taylor went ballistic and he was awesome. Here's the only other problem. You might do the same thing. You might have another 3 touchdowns this week. But I like this call because I do think there's going to be a couple big plays involved. And one I almost put in here was AD Mitchell. Watch out for Mitchell because, I mean, Reggie Wayne loves him. They want to get him the ball. He's a playmaker. If I were to have like a little side one I'd add to this, I think I'm going to play overs on AD Mitchell this week because this is that matchup where they can have those big plays. And I kind of think he's going to have one of those. They want to get him the ball. I just like that guy. So I'm going to take overs on him, but I like this play, even though he throws 11 times.
Do you guys know? And sorry if you said this, I was distracted trying to fix the blinds so I could.
You were killing me, by the way. I watching it. Like you had your face up against the camera, and then you had like a sun mustache. That was my favorite thing.
Doing the best I could to do it subtly, which is kind of impossible. But at least I'm not gonna lose my vision after this show. So I apologize if you said this already. Do you know how many times Anthony Richardson has had 200 passing yards this season, Erickson?
This is a fun game.
Twice, 2 times.
I'm gonna say once.
He's actually done it 3 times, but 2 of them were weeks 1 and 2. He had 212 against Houston in week 1. He had 204 against Green Bay in week 2. Since week 3 on, He has only done it once. Do you remember
Yeah.
which game it happened,
Yeah,
Welsh?
it was Jets.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Okay, I have a game I want to play since you have the stats up. How many games does he have more than 15 completions? Let's first guess, Erickson. First
Oh,
guess.
boy.
Well, it's probably going to be no more than 3 because he's only gone over 200 passing yards 3 times. So I would say 2.
I'm gonna guess 1.
It is 3.
Oh,
Is it all the games he threw for
But
200 yards?
it doesn't necessarily coincide with
Wait, so what's the least amount of completions he's had going over 200 yards?
the week 1. If you remember, he went 9 for 19.
Exactly.
212.
That's the stat line in week 17. 9 for 19, 200 yards.
That was when he had the big, the incredible 60-something yard pass.
That's happening again. That's all he can do.
It was 9 for 19 in week 1 for 212 yards. It was 17 for 34 in week 2 for 204 yards. He went from 11.2 yards per attempt to 6 from week 1 to week 2.
he's
And
incredible.
then against the Jets, it was 20 for 30 for 272 yards, which was his best, both in terms of completions and yardage on the season. So we'll see what he does against the Giants. Welsh, give me your number 2 prediction.
Number 2, J-Mo is going to do it again, what he did last week, and he is going to light up the San Francisco 49ers. We are going 100 plus. I actually was going to go 150, and he just said like 143, but I'm going to go 100 plus while also having a 40-yard plus play. I'm also going to throw in first touchdown might be in play here with Jameson Williams. You can get past that 49ers. The 49ers secondary is just not that great. And you're going to have Amon-Ra, playing that short inline, which is going to take so much focus. You're going to have Warner, who is going to give that middle of the field protection locked up on Laporta. They're going to be able to run. And that's, I think, the thing they're going to be the most scared of is attempting to stop the run. Looks like they probably lost Dre Greenlaw again. And they're going to be stacked up after a couple early runs from Jahmyr Gibbs. They're going to rock a play action. Jameson Williams is going deep. He is going to burn past these secondary, these safeties that are just big hitters, just big hitting safeties. You saw what Jameson Williams did this week, where it's just straight line speed. He's just not going to be caught up. And I think the Lions are going to do that again. I just think he's going to have a big blowout game against the 49ers. He's getting targets. This is what you can do against them in general. And, if Tyreek Hill could catch the ball, he would have had a much bigger game, just multiple deep, big drop passes that Jameson Williams is probably not going to do. Plus, 49ers can be really, really good tacklers, but that play they like to run with Jameson Williams, where they go about 15 in and then they just kind of set picks and let him go, that might be the play as well. Either way, Jameson Williams, 100 plus. He's going to have a 40-yard plus play. And though I'm not attaching the actual touchdown to this, I do think a first touchdown is in play against the 49ers, and that'll probably look, 10, 11 to 1 or something like that. So those are for the betting people.
I had a friend of mine ask me a start-sit question yesterday morning, and I steered him away from Jameson Williams, so that was unfortunate. Erickson, what do you think about this one for Week 17?
I was very wrong about the Lions in the entire. Actually, it's funny because I was watching this game, or I was watching it on Red Zone, I think, and I went to the other room, and then I hear the screen, the TV, like blaring, like, oh, like something big is happening. And I run in, and I just see J-Mo just like running freely down the sideline or like down the field, and I immediately picture that Simpsons gif where the guy walks into the bar and he like puts his hat down, and then he picks it back up and immediately leaves the room. Literally how I felt. I was like, well, I'm done with this Lions game. This isn't going to work for me.
Have you watched The Simpsons ever?
I was about to say, do you know what character that was?
It's the grandpa, right?
Okay, yeah. Because you said that guy. I was like, does he not know?
Well, I don't know his name.
I've actually not watched
either.
The Simpsons ever myself, but I know enough to know that is the girl.
Does he have a name, or is he just grandpa?
I think, isn't it Abe? I could be wrong.
I don't know.
Comments, let us know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I grew up on The Simpsons.
It's a total blind spot for me. Growing up, I didn't really watch that kind of television, and then I just kind of had moved past. It was past the golden era by the time I was old enough to be interested in a show like that, and I just turned to other shows. So it's definitely a blind spot.
Side note: what do you think is the most shameful show if you haven't watched that people will not let go? What do you think is the show?
By the way, it is Abe. I got it right. I just looked it up.
Oh, good.
So
Good job.
go ahead and
So what do you
take that.
think is the number one shame show? If you haven't watched it, people just gasp. Because I think mine is Seinfeld. I'm not a Seinfeld guy. I never watched Seinfeld. I watched a couple episodes. I know, but it's not my thing. And I feel like everybody gets very worked up about that. Is that number one, or would The Simpsons like trounce that?
I think Seinfeld's a really good call there. I am a huge Seinfeld fan, so that one I know very well. But I think that's one I could imagine like getting a gasp from it. From some of the like not comedies, you get into some of the like The Wire. You know, people are always surprised. Like I've seen a couple episodes, but I haven't finished it all the way through. Like Sopranos, some of those big ones. People who like Game of Thrones, and I am one of them. Like are like, oh, you got to watch it. But I don't think people are like taken aback when you haven't seen it. It's more
Breaking Bad to me is the one where it's like.
Breaking Bad's a good
one.
one.
Let's ask Erickson. How many of any of these shows have you watched?
Yeah,
I've watched mostly all of these. You haven't named a single show that I haven't watched. Yeah,
I think like
yeah, I watched it.
truly, it's probably like Friends in the Office. Like for my generation, at least, that people would be like, "Holy cow, you haven't seen those? That's insane."
What's more offensive to not watch? Breaking Bad, or those two? I forgot the third one.
They're like totally different like show. Like again, I feel like they're on different ends of the spectrum. Where Breaking Bad is like something you like need to like lock in and focus binging, whereas Seinfeld you would just like have on in the background while you're doing something else because it's like
people are going to let us know in the comments. What's the show that is the most offensive that someone has not watched?
This is a pretty like male skewed conversation as well. You know, this is a lot of shows that like my guy friends talk about. I have a lot of like female friends who talk about like Grey's Anatomy and not that, you know, men can't enjoy those shows too, but I wonder if like, depending on kind of the demographic, you would get a different answer from people that are shocked you haven't seen something.
We're going to find out.
We'll see what the folks say in the comments. I'm really happy with myself that I pulled that Abe name because I have seen one episode of The Simpsons ever.
Real? Oh,
which one?
It was the one where the gif from it that people see is like where Homer's eating a lot of donuts, like getting like force-fed donuts.
Episodes. So
yeah,
okay. So this is a battle here: me, Seinfeld versus you, Simpsons. I think Simpsons is insane. That you haven't seen. I guess culturally, like if you're like 25, maybe you didn't grow up on The Simpsons, but I don't know. People let us know.
I'm a little older than 25, but yeah, I mean, it was like just a hair. I mean, I definitely have friends my age who have watched it. It's like, it's not like people my age can't have seen The Simpsons. I just kind of missed that boat. And then didn't ever really circle back to it. And now it's like, what am I going to go watch 30 seasons worth to catch up? You know, probably not.
Yeah. You're already so behind. It's like, I'll never catch up anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's like similar with like reality shows. Like, not that I'm that into them, but like I have a friend who's rewatching for the first time all of Survivor. And I'm like, I'm not going to watch 47 seasons.
You can watch YouTube compilations of someone that already did it. And then you can watch it in like 6 hours.
Yeah. 20-minute video breaking down 30 seasons or something.
I love a good binge, but yeah, that's a lot.
Well, we know you're going to do on New Year's Day now, right? You're going to binge The Simpsons. All the Simpsons episodes.
We should make it a pact for 2025 that we'll each knock one of these shows off our list that we kind of owe it to ourselves to watch. I completely lost where we were on our Jameson Williams. I know we were talking about everybody. Did anybody else have any other thoughts on Jameson Williams?
No, I'm just surprised that Welsh didn't have anything to say about Juwan Jennings. Back-to-back down weeks, but I mean, he's got to bounce. He's playing Detroit. Like,
listen,
he's got to bounce back. He has to,
buddy. You know that was in my head. You know, it's the first thing I woke up to. But here's the problem. They're done. I didn't even know they were eliminated and when they played, but it was an earlier game. They're eliminated. They're playing for nothing. How funny is it when it's the most important, when nothing matters anymore? Debo steps up. Debo has his one game. As soon as they're eliminated, nothing matters and no one cares anymore. That team doesn't care anymore. You had George Kittle talking about like, well, there's still 2 games. And if there's football in front of me and I'm going to play and play, they stink. Like, Purdy's not making good decisions. He's making bad throws. They're not blocking for him. They don't have a running game. They can't establish a running game. They can't establish the pass game. Juwan Jennings, you can pass against the Lions, is in a great spot. I just don't know if Brock Purdy is going to be upright the entire game. I don't know how hard they're trying. I think they're going to get blown out. I think they are going to get demolished. They're playing for nothing. They might have an top 10 pick in the NFL draft this year. What are we talking about? They're going to get blown out. Do we have an early line on it? I'm going to look here. Lions
spread?
by 3.5. I'm going to ladder that up to 10. That's insane. I'm going to also Brock Purdy sucks at home. He's like the worst quarterback at home, and they're at home. I'm going to bet it as soon as we're done with this, 3.5, 4.5, 5. I'm going up to 9.5. I'm not going to play the 10. I'm going to go 9.5.
Honey, where's the mortgage?
Every single thing I have in my account, everything I won off of my first touchdown parlay, I'm betting on that all the way. I guess
the
10.
thought is maybe like Detroit is not going to put everything they have into this game because they're going to have a short week ahead of the next week, and that's the week to really like clinch the 1 seed division. Like the Vikings keep winning. Like week 18 is what they're saving it for. Like I can't think of another.
What if the Packers win? If the Packers win and beat the Vikings this weekend, and then Monday comes around, and Monday could be critical. They could win. They could clinch.
Would that clinch it? Minnesota wouldn't be able to win a tiebreaker. I haven't looked into that.
I'm just speculating.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So the Vikings play the Lions the last week.
Yeah.
Week 18, and the winner of that game, assuming that both teams win in week 17.
But if the Vikings lose this week and the Lions win, will week 18 matter? I don't know that it does or doesn't. I haven't checked.
They're both 13-2 right now. So it would, because then I guess if the Vikings,
I don't know who would have the tiebreaker,
and the Lions win. If the Vikings win, I believe I'm looking, they would have the same conference record. I don't know. I think that might come down to like fractional issues here. It doesn't matter. The 49ers are atrocious. They have so many different plays. Yeah, back to the original point. They're going to – Dan Campbell, they went for a 4th and 4, and they're 13-1 or whatever the hell they are this weekend. They're not going to lay down for the 49ers to play into next weekend. They are going to foot to the gas. They're going to put a 40 burger on the 49ers. You know what? Ladder it up to 20. Go 19.5 in favor of the Lions. They're going to kill them.
They don't make ladders that big, Welsh.
Well, I want to let everybody know that they have the chance to help shape the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. Hopefully they are hearing this after enjoying that long detour we took and not rolling their eyes about it. Please take a minute or two to fill out our quick, easy survey at fantasypros.com/survey and leave a review at fantasypros.com/review to help us improve. We want to be putting forth the best possible product we can, and we hope everybody, whether it's the offseason talking dynasty or getting an early look on the 2025 rankings or in season trying to help you win a title, we hope we can help and that you have fun listening to us and that you appreciate all the fun we're having on this show and all the work we put into it. So if you want to help us shape this show going forward, again, you can go to fantasypros.com/survey to fill out our quick, easy survey and leave a review at fantasypros.com/review to help us improve. We really appreciate your support, and we definitely thank everybody for listening here all season long, and especially during the holidays. We've got one prediction each left remaining. Erickson, what's your number one for week 17?
Will the real B-Rob please stand up? Brian Robinson versus Bijan Robinson. Falcons Commanders. I believe this game is being played on Sunday Night Football, but it will not be Kirk Cousins' revenge game. No, it's going to be Michael Penix under center for the Falcons. And I think Brian Robinson for the Commanders is going to bounce back. He had one of the worst games you could possibly ask for from a starting running back against the Eagles. Could not run the ball. He had 10 carries for 24 yards. He had 2 fumbles. So it was an absolute disaster for Brian Robinson in a spot that, we knew that the Eagles were a tougher matchup, but it was one that he had produced in earlier this season. So I thought that he was okay, like a low-end RB2, but, he completely underwhelmed and tanked in the fantasy football semis. But I think he bounces back here. I think that the matchup against the Atlanta Falcons is much better than against the Eagles. The last 11 running backs to face Atlanta have gone over their rushing yards projection. And we look at the Falcons, they've been better against running backs over the last couple weeks, but to me, it's a lot of the opponents that they've played, not exactly the best. The Giants, the Raiders, like some of these teams that don't really have great offenses that haven't really been able to establish any type of run game against the Atlanta Falcons, but some of these better teams, I think Atlanta probably falls more into that category. I think Brian Robinson is going to have a bounce back performance. So I'm going to say he goes over 125 yards from scrimmage. I think he scores a touchdown against the Falcons. Again, without Austin Eckler, he still has an elite role in this offense. Like he still played 63% of the snaps. He caught 2 of his 3 targets for 17 yards. So he's still involved in the receiving game. And he still sees all the red zone usage. He went 0 for 3 for rushing inside the red zone against the Eagles. I don't think it's going to happen 2 weeks in a row. Are we really going to see double-digit touchdowns from Olamide Zaccheaus and Jameson Crowder, who I didn't even know was on the Commanders again, till he scored 2 touchdowns last week? That's not going to happen again. So I think Brian Robinson's going to get back in the end zone, get back to producing at a level that he's produced mostly all year long. So even though Bijan Robinson still might outscore him, I think Brian Robinson's going to have himself a day against the Falcons.
It's not going to matter for me if Brian Robinson has a good day because he absolutely finished me in half my leagues this week. I had so much invested in Brian Robinson all season long, and it was a good pick, in the long term looking back, but it really cooked me in week 16. That was
sure
painful to watch.
You're not the only one.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not. Well, do you like Brian Robinson in this battle of B. Robinson running backs?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm picking between them, I'm going to take Bijan.
Yeah, I shouldn't have framed it like that. I just meant, do you like Brian Robinson? And he happens to be facing Bijan.
Yeah, I think they're going to try to get him back and more involved and, get the confidence going. It was funny, earlier in there, I remember us talking about Jeremy McNichols, and he doesn't do anything. And they started throwing him the ball because they just couldn't trust Brian Robinson. But you're not going to get these massive, big touchdown games every single week from Jaden Daniels. And it's going to be, like you said, it was a really, really rough matchup from a run. That was also why, stupidly, I wasn't super into Jaden Daniels. The Eagles defense is really tough. It just got a lot worse when you had Jalen Hurts out, and then being able to control the offense even more opportunities for the Commanders. But yeah, I think Brian Robinson is in a much better spot this week. They're going to give him the rock. They throw him the ball. They're going to get him some touchdowns, get that confidence back up off the 2 fumbles. So I'm with this one.
Let's look at your final prediction here, Welsh.
Final one, Mike Evans incentive time. We are in Mike Evans incentive range. And do you remember what they were, Erickson? You rattled them off recently. I'm on the spot. It was like 18 catches and 200 or 300 yards he needed to get to. All right, he's under 200 yards for the 1,000.
Yeah, he needs 90. I think it's 91 yards per game the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, he has 818, so it's essentially 90. Yeah, it is actually 91 on there. And then there's some reception prop. I think he's got to get to 70 for an incentive as far in his contract, and as well as a touchdown. So I'm saying all of this past week seemed like a really good spot where he was going to be involved on the touchdown side. Did not happen. This coming week, they're going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who going into this past week were number 2 in touchdowns given up to wide receivers. Also, from the fantasy perspective, they're top 6 in points given up. Mike Evans is scoring 2 touchdowns this week. We are going to lock in. He is going to lock in. Mike Evans is going to get a litany of targets up against Atlanta, and we are going to get Mike Evans scoring 2 touchdowns. It's as easy as Baker Mayfield, only looking his way. We went Bucky this past week. Hopefully we get it. I guess I went a Buck scoring 2. This week we're going another Buck scoring 2, but it's Mike Evans in incentive range for the final 2 weeks.
Erickson, what do you think about Evans? Where are you going to have him ranked this week, you think?
Top 5. I mean, all the incentives are there. And Welsh, I'm not sure if you misspoke. You meant to say Panthers, right? Because that's
Panthers. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Did I say the Falcons?
Yeah,
yes,
you said the Falcons.
Yes.
No problem. Just trying to make sure.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is a matchup that, again, Carolina is a team that you usually target for running backs, but it's really, hey, however you want to score, make your choice, right? And the Buccaneers, their number 1 priority is hey, get Mike Evans into the end zone. That's what they want to do more than anything else. So yeah. Carolina, again, if it wasn't for Marvin Harrison unable to catch all of these fades, he would be scoring touchdowns against the Panthers too. So I think this makes a lot of sense, especially if Cade Otton misses again. If he's out, just focuses on Mike Evans as that number 1 target. So yeah, it's always funny because it's going to be interesting to see what the books open as his receiving yards. I think the last line closed at 82.5 yards, which
84. It was 84.
You're just this is such a big number, but it's exactly because that's the pace that he has to be on. Yeah. So that's why they put it at that number. So
yes or no, does he get 1,000?
Yes, he's going to do
absolutely.
It. So,
and by the way,
yeah,
I put myself in a rabbit hole as soon as I said the Falcons in my head, and then I started looking. By the way, it's even better. The Carolina Panthers have given up the most receiving touchdowns, and I believe it's 20 plus on the season to wide receivers. So it's a phenomenal matchup. I undersold myself for whatever reason. I was staring at the Falcons and I said that, but yeah, it's an even better matchup. And Mike, you got to smash the Mike Evans stuff right when it opens up, because to your point, it's probably going to rise 5 yards. If they do anything under 80, it's going to go back up. I bet you it's going to push 85 to 90 close to close because of, like you said, they got to get to that 90 marker. And that's why, like, we're so close to 1,000. There is one touchdown that's a part of the incentives. And I got to go and look. I have it bookmarked what the reception side of it is, but he's really close to one of the levels of receptions, really close to the yards, and he needs that touchdown. So we're going 2 against an abysmal Carolina Panthers defense. Thank you very much.
The Panthers give up receiving touchdowns to all the good players except Trey McBride for some reason. All right, we'll get out of here on that prediction. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you again for everybody, like I said, who's been listening all season. We will be with you throughout this week to help you in the fantasy championship games. We're gonna have a few shows that we're not doing that we might usually do, just in terms of some housekeeping to let you know what to expect. But we've obviously got this show coming out on Tuesday. Again, we did record this Monday morning, and then we're gonna have our usual Thursday show and Friday show as well at the end of the week, plus some betting shows too. So be sure to stick around and look for most of the usual shows that you get every single week. And we are here also on Discord and social media and everywhere else to help you lock in that fantasy championship and hopefully some nice winnings. For Welsh and Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again next time.